Hi, and welcome to Stories with Wanda. We're going to read a book called Gus Me, the story of my granddad and my first guitar. It was written by Keith Richards, and the pictures were created by Theodora Richards. Theodore Augustus Dupree lived with 7 daughters near the Seven Sisters Road in a house that was filled with instruments and cake. Theodore Augustus Dupree could play the piano and scrape the violin, blow the saxophone and strum the guitar. He had been a soldier, a baker, and the leader of a dance band. But now Theodore Augustus Dupree was my granddad. Now he was Gus. There was nothing like visiting Gus. The closer to his house I'd get, the bigger my smile would grow. By the time I landed on his doorstep, I was all teeth. He'd be waiting at the front door for me. "Fix the sink, Gus," my grandmother would call out. "Can't do it, Emma," Gus would call back. "Keith and I are going for a walk." He'd wink at me and whistle for Mr. Thompson woofed, and our adventure would begin. We'd walk for miles. We'd walk through towns. We'd walk through the countryside. And Gus, he would hum every step of the way. He'd hum whole symphonies as we strolled from one village to the next. He'd hum funny little tunes as we wandered skinny streets and smoky alleys, marching songs as we tiptoed around foggy ponds and explored silent forests. With Gus, you had no idea where you'd end up. One time, he led me all the way to the top of Primrose Hill to look at the night stars. "Don't know if we can make it home tonight," Gus said. So we slept under a tree on the top of the hill, with the sky lights above us and the city lights below. Once Gus walked us all the way to London and into the workshop of a big store that sold instruments. "Let's just pop in here. I've got to pick up some strings." "Okay, Gus." Inside, it looked like a beehive. Gus lifted me up and sat me on a shelf so I could see everything. Violins hung from the ceiling by wires. Horns clung to the walls. Men in long brown coats fixed broken instruments and built new ones. I watched as they bent over cellos, trombones, and trumpets. They dabbled at the drums with glue and tapped at them with tiny hammers. Men tested the guitar strings, dink-a-plink, dink-a-plink, and the drums, dock-dock, fum-fum, dock-fum. My eyes followed a line of guitars that snaked around the room on a conveyor belt, and in the middle of everything, big, bubbling buckets of glue went blub, blub, blub. It was magic. I sat on that shelf watching it all. And then, right there, I fell in love with instruments. When Gus and I got back to his house that day, I took a long look at the guitar that always sat on top of his piano. It seemed more beautiful than ever. All I wanted was to make the strings go dink-a-plink-plink like the men in the store. but I couldn't reach it. When you're tall enough, you can have a go, Gus said. Every time I visited Gus, I reached for the guitar. Even on my toes, I couldn't touch it. One day, I felt like I was tall enough to grab it, but I didn't even have to try. Gus simply handed it to me. It's all yours, he said. He sat with me and taught me how to hold it, strum it, and pluck a little. When you learn how to play Malagueña, he told me, you can play anything. Dink-a-plink, dink-a-plink, dink-a-plink. And I practiced on that beautiful guitar. One day, Gus heard me playing Malagueña. He nodded. Then he said something I'll never forget. I think you're getting the hang of it. After that, I took that guitar everywhere. I went to sleep with my arms wrapped around it. And even today, all these years later, I think of Gus every time I walk on stage, every time I write a song, every time I reach for a guitar and play a few dink-a-plinks for my own grandchildren. I say to myself, thanks, Granddad. Thanks, Gus. And that's the end of the story. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again soon.